Books on the Brain.
Wait, who's doing the intro? I can do
Do you want me
it.
to do it?
Welcome back to Books on the Brain, a podcast of books and nonsense. I'm Deirdre.
I'm Danielle.
And we're back, y'all. It's been a while.
Do be like that sometimes, but absence makes the heart grow fonder.
That is what they say.
Yeah, who's they? Who's they? That's all I'm gonna say.
The social they, I guess.
Social they.
Let us know if you missed us. Please, just let us know.
If you didn't keep it to yourself.
Yeah, actually, if you didn't keep it to yourself. But we would like to know if you have been missing out. I feel like every time we take a break from recording this season, I'm like, guys, this month, and it's this year. Like, it's a big one for both of us. And shocker to nobody, we are the only two people that work on this podcast. So the reason why things are pushed back is because Danielle and I are busy beavers, and
we're multi-talented individuals with many interests.
Indeed.
What have you been up to, my dude?
Let's see. I'm like looking at my calendar. So I closed a Broadway show. Very fun. So I am officially on vacation, which is nice. And I'm very happy to have the luxury to be able to be on vacation and to not have to have lined something up immediately. Because 10 months on that schedule is rough.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. And I don't think unless you sit down and talk to somebody and really understand the minutia of the job of working daily at a Broadway show, I don't think you'll ever really understand what that's like, especially to continue. I have so much respect for people that can do shows for 3 years straight.
I can't imagine.
Regardless of whether they take a vacation or not. Because I even said if we had extended any longer, I would have had to take an extended vacation. Just to get myself together. So I'm really, it's been I feel like so much happened on that show, and it's going to be an interesting one to think back on because I'm really thankful that it happened. I just have a lot of love for the people that I got to work with and for that show and the opportunities it provided me. But so much in my life happened on it, the good and the bad and the ugly. That it is kind of nice to just close that chapter and feel like I'm able to reset and move forward, and just feel like life is moving on.
Start the next part.
That's the main thing. I feel like I don't even remember when the last time we recorded was, because
you had just come back from Disney.
No way. Was that the last one?
I asked you about Disney because I was like, what food did you eat?
You would know because you edited the episode.
But I asked you 3 weeks after you came back from your vacation, but that is what we talked about.
We haven't talked since I graduated.
We talked about your grad.
Oh, we did? Okay.
Yes. We talked about your grad, and we talked about... Maybe that's it.
Okay, great. So yeah, other than closing the show, I've graduated from my master's program. My thesis is registered with the Library of Congress. I got a letter this week.
Oh my God, dude, frame it.
I know, I need to. It's that my copyright is registered with the Library of Congress, which is so cool.
It's so cool. I'm gonna have to read it. Send me a link. I want to read it.
I will. I actually got reached out to by a queer walking tour on Instagram, and they wanted to read part of it because of one of the people I researched. They're apparently people have been publishing stuff since I wrapped my research phase and was just in the writing phase. There's been more published about them, and they were like, we'd love to see what's available if we can. So I've been talking with them about it, which is really cool.
That is so freaking
I'm pretty
cool.
excited about that. And I'm
You said the
presenting,
published Deirdre.
no, and I'm presenting that research at a like virtual meeting for 19th century
Mm.
historians at the end of the month. So I
Ooh.
feel like I'm like, now that the show is wrapped and I've had some time away from my thesis, I'm kind of getting back into that
Yeah.
research phase.
Academia girly.
She is. She's an independent researcher.
That's so cool, dude. I'm really proud of you.
Thank
I've
you.
I've no ownership over this, but I'm very proud of you. This is a really cool thing that you got to do.
Thanks.
And you did the thing, which is cool.
I know.
Pretty dang.
What about you? What have you been up to?
Um, classes. Taking summer courses so I can graduate early. I finished. I did 6 weeks, like 3 classes for 6 weeks, and right now I'm doing one class in 3 weeks. So it is kicking my butteroony.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, like if you do not do work every day, you are behind. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
that's not the way I like to work. I like to work like the night before everything's due.
Yeah.
So I've been having to get this, not wait until 11 p.m. to submit things, which has been a hard sacrifice for me in my procrastination station.
Yeah.
We started summer camp, so I'm back doing musical theater and theater summer camps this summer. We had our first week last week, which is 6 to 8 years old. They're so adorable little babies. I love them. We had our 9 to 12s this week, which is awesome. We have our week next week is like sold out at 25 kids, which is the most registrations we've gotten ever. Which I don't
Cool.
know. I'm just like proud of this little company that like I've helped grow, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Feeling like nostalgic. I don't know. I was calling my mom is in Winnipeg because her and my aunt are cleaning out my nonna's house so that they can sell it.
Yeah.
Um, and I was on the phone with my mom and my aunt this morning. They were dropping off my cousin at a theater camp in Winnipeg.
Nice.
And my aunt was like, "I'm just so proud of you," and I'm just like sitting in a McDonald's parking lot picking up breakfast, just sobbing. She's like, "I'm proud of you." I'm like, I was like,
Aww.
"Oh my God." It's just a lot. People, it just feels like being at the end of like this is my last class that I take, and then I do my practicum, and then I'm a teacher. It's just great. Like to think that I was just been reflecting so much on like I literally just decided to apply for university on a limb because I was like, I just don't know what I want to do. And
Yeah.
then I just went, and it's been 4.5 years. And like I know COVID is 3 of those years, which
Right.
makes everything seem a little bit warped. But yeah, it just felt like something that was never gonna happen is like happening now, which is crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
feeling very nostalgic and like elderly, because I'm like, oh my life, everything's coming together. Um, which is cool. It's
Yeah.
cool.
That's cool.
That's how I feel.
I know. I had a very similar feeling when I still am feeling that way, but a very similar feeling when I actually was listening to a book today, which we
Ooh.
can get into this later when we talk about current reads, but like my
Ooh.
reading situation right now, I need books to read. I have a whole stack and I'm not interested in any of them. But I put on an audiobook earlier while I was cleaning, and
Yeah.
it basically was about this girl who was a chef, and she was working in a restaurant, and she was like coming to the realization at work, she's like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like I'm 26, I've been
Yeah.
working for this for years, like busting my ass to have this career that I thought I wanted, and now I feel like I need to do something else. Ends up uh mouthing off to a customer and quitting because the head chef was like, what are you doing that's a food critic?
Oh.
And she was like, I quit. And then she goes home to her magic 8 ball and asks it questions, and that's how she like makes her decisions, is she leaves it up to
Oh my
fate.
gosh.
And she ends up applying to law school, and so then it follows her to law school in the Midwest. uh and she's like going to classes and stuff, and the whole time I was like, wow, this is literally me when I got into my master's
Sorry.
program.
Literally.
You're good.
I was like, it's giving strong Elwood vibes where it's like, what, like it's
Yes,
hard?
literally. It's the description of it was like, it's it's like Legally Blonde meets something.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this podcast listeners, if there's some decision in your life that you're like, oh, I don't know, just go for it.
Just do it.
Even if you're worried you're too old to do it, even if you're worried that about money, or like just worried about just like how things will work out, just do it. Do it, because time flies when you're doing the thing you're meant to do.
Agreed.
Cheese alert. Cheese alert. I'm a little feral tonight. These kids are making me feral, so I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I feel like we need a little bit of ferocity with these episodes.
Perfect. Good. You
want to tell everybody what we're doing today?
Yeah, I do. We're doing a book report. I'm not gonna lie, book report's a little disjointed because I was doing it while the kids were watching Tangled today. So I had a lot of kids coming up being like, "Can I go to the bathroom?" So I'm standing holding the door trying to like type. So Deirdre's book report's gonna be really good.
I don't know. Mine does feel a little disjointed also, so that's okay.
Okay, perfect.
Who wants to go first?
What is the tone of yours?
Silly goofy.
Mine's like angry.
You should go first.
Great. Okay. I entitled this I Hate Texas.
Nice. Me too.
Guess what it's about?
I wonder.
So, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, boo, signed into law HB 900, which requires suppliers of books to school libraries, librarians, and teachers to rate the books, both on future sales and retroactively.
I fully missed this. I had no idea. This
happened in June. I think like at end of June it got signed. But literally, I just saw like a bubble up on Twitter, which is funny because like she ain't using Twitter anymore. She's a Threads girly.
Yeah, R.I.P. Twitter.
Elon Musk ruined it. I hate Texas and Elon Musk. We didn't even talk about the Titanic submersible that happened between our time.
Oh my god,
isn't that crazy?
The SAG strike.
Yeah, it's still happening.
Just happened.
Or the writer's strike is still happening.
SAG strike just started.
Sorry.
There have been a lot of life events that have happened, like world events, since we last spoke.
Dang.
I know.
Anyway, RIP to all of those out there. Great. So it's this law basically, and you look up the photos of this guy signing it, and he seems so happy, and I'm like, so like obviously we can see how this could go very wrong. The fact that booksellers, these book suppliers, have to rate these books. Yeah. And basically the governor describes it when he was like pitching this was it's as empowering parents, which sucks because it is censoring. Like it's not.
Yeah.
And this is something that like I have a special interest in as a future educator of like, where does parents' domain end? Where does like students' own agency begin? When does the school get involved? Like it's all very interesting. But I was just like, dude, this sucks. And basically like it's the government dictating what parents are letting their child see rather than parents actually dictating it, because it's these government officials who are making these categories and then expecting book suppliers to do it. And guess what? It's mostly indie bookstores that are having to do this, and now they're like, we can't sell to schools anymore or libraries, which sucks. Because they're like, we want to, but we can't. Like in good conscience, we're not doing this, so we can't sell them to these places.
Yeah.
So here's a little bit of information on what the actual legislation is. So HB 900 requires book vendors to identify any books that are sexually explicit and sexually relevant. And you might be thinking to yourself, what does that mean? And I said, stupid. So first of all, it's so subjective. Like what I would consider being sexually explicit versus sexually relevant Like there's no barometer for that. Like it's not objective. And
Right.
it gets worse because it's basically like things that are sexually relevant are things that have sexual content but are featured in the curriculum. So they have like curricular elements to it. Things that are sexually explicit are things that have sexual content that are not curricularly. But I'm also like, the thing about curriculum, you talk to any educator, it's so open-ended. It is for the educator to like take these guidelines and through their pedagogy, the way that they choose to teach,
Right.
they get to shape what they do. So I'm like, to say that, I'm like, curriculum, like it basically is just marginalizing queer and people of color. Like
Yeah.
that's basic, and like disabled voices, neurodivergent, like that's all this is doing. Um, so this would limit or inhibit students' access to legal materials, as librarians and vendors would inevitably err on the side of caution on not selling or carrying books because there's a fine. There's like actual legal consequences if they do sell books that are deemed sexually explicit, which is awful. Whether or not a book whether or not book or materials are sexual relevant and sexually explicit or inherently prejudiced and can result in many different ratings from different vendors. So it's basically this guy, Greg, was like, oh, I want books to have like movie ratings. But instead of movie ratings, it's is it sexually explicit or is it sexually relevant?
Mm.
Which I'm like, even that wording, I'm like, what is sexually relevant?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that so strange?
Yeah.
Um, Moreover, simply from a pragmatic standpoint, abiding by these strict guidelines would be almost impossible, resulting in access to far fewer books than in the past. And also, I don't know if you caught it, not only is it new books, but they have to go back to every book that they sell and decide if it is sexually explicit or sexually relevant. So not only are they doing it on new books coming out, but they need to go back and do it on every book.
Absolutely not.
Isn't that nuts?
Absolutely not. Because
To all schools,
how many
all
times
libraries.
have you like, hello, not just school libraries, like all libraries, like they're stocking as much as they can.
Yes.
But then
Isn't
thinking
that
about like what I
nuts?
read in school, how many books did you read in school between your English classes and whatever other classes that you read in? I mean, I guess the only classes that I really read in were my English classes, but that was 4 classes, well, and my dramatic literature class. So
Yep.
that's 4 classes over the course of 4 years.
Yep.
How many of them had just inherent sexual tones to them?
It's so many.
Like,
All of them.
just like not even tones, just like something woven in like 1 or 2 chapters and then isn't discussed at all. Or even books like The Great Gatsby.
Well, and let alone the books that people see as inherently sexual that aren't,
Right.
right? Like those books have sexual content, right? Like there's kissing scenes. Like I remember reading a book called Julie of the Wolves in grade 5 that had a sexual assault scene, and I was like I will never forget that.
Yeah.
Um, but and that was a reading group book that we had to read in groups. That was not Danielle picking it off the shelf.
Right.
But like, would that be sexually relevant because it has curricular things, but then a book about a trans child is not? It's sexually explicit because it's sex, but it's not curricular. Like,
Fishy.
hate it. Fishy, dude. Fishy. Um, yeah, and so it's basically asking these book professionals to not only have to like provide publishers and provide different like outlets these descriptions, but categorize these books that they sell and they love. And they can't read every book. Like they just cannot possibly read every book.
No.
I know we all try, we all try to read every book, but there's no possible way. Especially like since it's going to go into action in September. Like how are they supposed to do that? Like right, it's just crazy. Um so okay. So basically this is what they defined as like the state law defines patently offensive as materials that are affront to current community standards of decency. Pardon? what does that even, first of all, what does that mean? Too many
I
words.
couldn't tell you.
Second of all, like, it's to current community standards of decency. Things that go against current community standards of decency. In this climate, Barbara, jeez, whatever. Greg, we're not friends. So
Yeah.
okay, so here we go. Here's some info. If a bookseller had provided a book in the past that they had since deemed to be sexually explicit, they are to issue a recall for that book. So taking that book off the shelves, taking those books back from classrooms. The Texas Education Agency will also maintain a list of booksellers that are banned from doing business with Texas schools and libraries. Booksellers that knowingly provided sexually explicit books, those that incorrectly rate their books, and those that do not recall previously sold books, that will all be added to the list and must petition for their removal if they wish to sell books to schools and libraries again.
Who's going to be left?
Texas is going to be illiterate. No one's going to read it, Texas. Who's reading in Texas right now? Like, isn't that crazy that you're going to be blacklisted for supplying
How is
these
this
books?
someone has to be countering this
I
law.
think I cannot fathom that this is going to go through. Like, well, it is through. It's signed. It was signed into whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to meet some it already is meeting
Pushback.
backlash, but it's also like, it's Texas. So I think
I know.
there's a lot of support for this, because it's this, the way that it's being framed is like, we're keeping sex out of our children's hands, like pornography, which I'm like,
You're not, though.
that's not what it is.
Like,
Tango Makes Three, the two penguins with two dads, is not pornography.
yeah, no.
The penguin with two dads, it's not. It's a delightful children's book that is great.
You tell him.
And it's like, for me, it's like, even just putting aside all my political views, you're asking people to make a subjective decision, and then you are going to objectively look at their subjective opinion. Like, do you think it's sexually explicit? Do you think it's sexually relevant? But if you're wrong, we're gonna blacklist you. So do you know how many books are going to be put sexually explicit when they're right on that boundary line?
Yeah.
Way more than if, like, it just, it's not going to be good. I mean, it's not good now because it's happening.
Right.
Needless to say, we all have some very strong feelings about this, Avi. Basically, there's like I was saying, there was like this revolt of independent bookstores and booksellers being like, hey, we don't want to do this. And what was really cool is I saw a lot of like these independent bookstores, or like outside of Texas, reaching out. Like, there was this one website that was like, every student in Texas now has an automatic student membership for our website, and they're in Michigan. So it's like, they're gonna ship books to these kids, which I was like, this is awesome, but also feels like very abortion ban vibes. Like, we should not be, like, it's just crazy. Like, but it's great to hear that there's like support for these kids. But yeah, this is a thing that's happening in our world, which is archaic. It's archaic, and it's really, really, really going against any of the progress that we've had moving forward.
Yeah.
So this brought me to a website called the Kids Right to Read Project, which is part of the NCAC Youth Free Expression Program, which you're like, whoa, so many acronyms. Basically, it's this like education advocacy place in the US that helps with book challenges and bannings in school and libraries. So it's basically this like, I'll put it's in my resources, but it had this page on it that had all of the book bannings, or like censorships, where in the US and why. So you could like, it was a map, an interactive map, and you could say like who was it banned by, and it was like parents, religious leaders, school administration, and it would like search or would condense the search.
Great.
So then I was curious. So I was like, okay, what kind of government official bannings have there been? And then there had been 4, and I wanted to read some of them too. So South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster requested that the state's superintendent of education, so the big head honcho, begin a comprehensive investigation into the presence of obscene and pornographic materials in public schools in South Carolina.
Right.
The request was sparked by a challenge to Genderqueer, which is the book Genderqueer in a local school district, which is like the most banned book in America, I think.
Right now, I
don't know if it's this year. I do have my list of the top 15 who were banned from the 2022-2023 list that I want to read a little bit later. Texas basically had 2 books removed from the public library under pressure from local politicians, which is against the library's procedure. Mayor in Ridgefield, MS, which I think is Missouri, threatened to withhold library funding unless the library removed LGBTQ plus books.
You cannot threaten to withhold funding. That seems like mafia level stuff.
I said, from the mayor with your whole butt out, you're gonna say that? Dude. Like, that's crazy. And not even like a book, the LGBTQ books. I said, what, half your library? Okay. This one's crazy. Oklahoma's Attorney General announced that his office is investigating more than 50 books found in school libraries after parents alleged that they were obscene. The books include Brave New World, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Lord of the Flies, Of Mice and Men. Under decades-old Supreme Court precedent, a book cannot be obscene if it has serious literary, scientific, and artistic merit. So that little piece of information, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Because if a book cannot be seen as obscene, if it has these things, then how are books being sexually relevant and sexually explicit?
Right.
Like, that for me feels like it's a little bit of a contradiction. And I was like, oh, get him, girl.
Yeah.
Go after him. But yeah, I had like that had come up on my radar and I was like, this sucks. And then I was like, okay, what were the most banned books this year in America? Because they just came out with a list of the 2022-2023 year.
Yeah.
And I would like to share some of these to you. Oh yeah, Genderqueer memoir, number 1. Obby. 56 bans, 150 challenges. So remember, bans are like taken off shelves. Challenges are like parents are like going to councils being like, we don't want this in the classroom.
Right.
Number 2, Boys Are All Blue by George M. Johnson, which is a book about, it's a coming of age essay book.
Yeah.
Which had 38 bans and 86 challenges.
That book is on my shelf. I need to read it.
There you go. The Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison's always on these lists.
Always.
Which is about a Black girl growing up during the Great Depression. 32 bans, 73 challenges. Out of the Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez, which is about an explosion that killed nearly 300 students and teachers at a Texas school. Provides historical context for this YA novel. I've never heard of it. 31 bans, 50 challenges. Flamer by Mark Curado. This award-winning 2020 novel explores a teenage boy's struggle to understand and accept his sexuality while at summer camp. 25 bans, 62 challenges. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, Avi.
Yeah.
And yeah, which this killed me. Other challenges cited violence and anti-police messages, as they should.
Hello.
As they should. 24 bans. Crank, which I cannot believe people are still reading Crank.
I know.
It's a daughter's struggle with addiction to crystal meth. 24 bans, 48 challenges. Lawn Boy, Jonathan Evison, which is a story about a young biracial gay boy from a working class family in Washington State. 23 bans, 54 challenges. Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, which is a book about 5 troubled teenagers who become involved in prostitution in different parts of the country. 21 bans. But this author had 4 books on the top 100 bans list, which is kind of a slay. This book is Gay by Juno Dawson, who wrote
the Her Majesty's Royal Coven.
Yes, thank you. Which is a book about, like, it's an information book. 21 Bands, 48 Challenges, The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Truman Alexi, which I've read, which is a great novel, which is 21 Bands, 52 Challenges, for 13 Reasons Why, 20 Bands, Meet Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews, 20 Bands, 48 Challenges, Sold by Patricia McCormick, which is a book about sex slavery, 18 Bands, Melissa by Alex Gino, which is a book about a trans fourth grader, which this has an interesting little tidbit on it. In 2020, opponents of the book tried to close a town library in Kansas because it was on the shelf, 18 Bands. So that's the top 15. And my thing is, like, it's crazy because, like, those are the ones we hear about.
Right.
Like, those aren't every one, or like every angry email that a teacher's getting sent from parents or anything. Like, for me, I'm like, this is so, I just could never fathom limiting what my child reads. Like, I would rather them read and have conversations with them about it. I don't know. I'm just like, it's crazy. And to hear this bill being passed, I'm like, this is scary. It's scary, dude.
Yeah.
So I'm like, where does it end? Where does the line get drawn now? Right? There's the language is so you know what I mean?
It's like broad strokes.
Yes, very much this.
Also, it's scary, especially now, seeing that the Supreme Court is just reneging on all its protocol and precedent. Not protocol, but precedent, that's what I meant. That, like, it is not unfeasible to me to see any precedent set for book banning getting thrown away in favor of keeping this country ignorant.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway, that's my book report. That, like, keep your eyes peeled for this, because I'm sure there's petitions out there that you can sign, or even just getting this out, talking to people about this, because this is crazy. Like, when you actually explain to people what this is crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my I hate Texas.
Yeah. Good job.
Thanks.
I'm about to take us on a completely different thought.
Thank God. Get us away from here.
It's just silly, goofy vibes over here in this house. So, we're going to talk about what makes a beach read. And, no, I do not mean that as a funny joke. I was trying to come up with a, like, actual, like, joke for it. Like, what makes a beach read, blah, 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 but I couldn't think of one.
What makes a beach read? Yeah, I don't know.
Obviously, I'm not talking about Emily Henry's book, Beach Read, but if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you probably know that both Danielle and I love that book. And it would bring me great joy to be sitting poolside with a snack and a beverage in that book right now. Just saying.
I would literally decease. I would decay away. I want that so badly.
I know. So obviously it is summertime, which inevitably means that a majority of people are taking vacations, many of which happen by the beach or pool or lake, generally a body of water. And for many people, this means bringing along a book for company during rest and relaxation. So I don't know if you've seen this, but for me, as I've spent time, like, getting back into reading and seeing discourse in the online spaces, the idea of a beach read, like, inevitably comes up. And some people have very specific criteria for what constitutes a beach read. And, like, some people will just bring along whatever they're currently reading to the beach, but for some people, it's a time to crack open something new or, like, a very specific genre. I found a Book Riot article where they pointed out that beginning in May, many books are published with the sole goal being that they are, quote, perfect vacation reads because they are light, fluffy, or compulsively readable novels. So we know I love a good history lesson. And the Book Riot article produced this for me, and I went on the like craziest rabbit hole today, and it made me really happy. So The Guardian published an article in 2016 where they shared that the term beach read emerged in the 1990s, specifically in book trade publications like Booklist and Publishers Weekly. It goes on to discuss it goes on to distinguish the correlation between vacation and reading, saying, quote, ever since the 19th century, when novels were considered relatively sinful indulgences, leisure and fiction reading have been closely associated. But it was not until the wide popularization of paperbacks in America in the middle of the last century that you began to see the beach so closely entwined with a page-turning thriller, end quote. And I think it's important to point out here that they use thriller very specifically. I would not consider that light or fluffy, like the Book Riot article was talking about. But also, we're going to get into this sort of 19th century. Oh my God, lost my train of thought. Like how the 19th century played a really big role in summer reading. So the New York Times published an article in 2021, I think. Yes, 2021, titled A Brief History of Summer Reading. And they point out that the mid-1800s saw the emergence of what we now associate as summer reading. Quote, buoyed by an emerging middle class, innovations in book publishing, and a growing population of avid readers, many of them women, this rise of summer reading coincided with the birth of another cultural tradition, the summer vacation. End quote. They go on to talk about vacation habits of middle-class Americans, noting that the expansion of train lines led to summer resorts opening and the possibility of summer vacations being accessible to more people than just the upper class. So pre the term beach read, summer reads existed thanks to, or the term summer reads existed. And thanks to the New York Times article, I was sent to two historical articles from the New York Times, one published on June 5th, 1897, and the other published June 2nd, 1968. So the article from 1897 was titled Books for Summer Reading, the Best of a Year's Output Selected, Classified, and Each Work Reviewed, a Guide and Directory. The article provided 200 works to consider for summer reading, each having been reviewed by the Times. Like, that's a huge list.
That's a lot.
And the article says, quote, the aim in making the selections has been to provide what is best in current literature, inasmuch as lists of books more than a year old have been excluded. This, of course, means that what is usually called standard literature is not represented except insofar as some of the past year's books shall eventually be accepted as standard, a matter which must be left to time for demonstration. For the present, we are concerned only with books that are now widely read and liked, the books talked about, the active living literature of the year, end quote. The brief ends noting that the vastness of the list is due in part to the range of taste readers have and wanting to have something in the list for every type of reader, and that, quote, each could be left then to choose for himself his own smaller list, end quote. Because I guess women were not considered when the list was put together.
Women can't read, Deirdre, didn't you know?
But this is going to be interesting when I read you the categories. So they broke down the list into the genre categories. So we've got memoirs, history, biography, travel and adventure, gardens, flowers and birds, outdoor sports, essays, poetry, fiction by famous hands, historical novels, collection of short stories, novels by some newer men, a group of female novelists. Interesting that the article pointed directly to men choosing things off of this list, but they have a whole section of female novelists. Noteworthy long stories, books on many themes, and the 50 best books of 1896. So then the 1968 article was titled Summer Reading Issue, and critic Clive Barnes pondered what makes summer reading something to be kept apart from other seasons. And he said, quote, why summer reading? One doesn't have winter reading or fall reading. That, I suppose, would have too autumnal an echo, or even spring reading. Do we chosen few of the reading classes, read different books at summer? I wonder. End quote. In the article, he talks about his own relationship with reading during the summer as a child when he would bring books that he didn't like and therefore wouldn't open when spending time in the sun. And he finishes the article talking briefly about the thoughts of this guy, Marshall McLuhan. And he does not like him. He like spends a solid sentence talking about how he thinks this guy is dumb.
Slay.
But that he had this like one noteworthy thought about technological distractions and thinking about the distractions in the world. So again, this is 1968, so thinking about like what technological advancements were happening at that time that would affect people's reading habits, but then also considering that there is still socially a time and place for reading, which is the summer. And this even got me thinking about my own beach read habits. So I think we've talked about it on the podcast, like I don't go to the beach very often. I think I've made it like one day each summer for the last couple of years. Like, you know, like I'm not like taking weekends or like week long. It's usually I end up going for a single day. But on that single day, I consistently pack a book. Whether or not I actually end up opening it, I must bring a book with me to the beach.
There.
So the New York Times article was really incredible. I highly recommend reading it. It's going to be in my resources because not only did they clearly do their research, they had historians and sociologists contribute to this history, and they like very clearly did a decent amount of journalism, which is not something I can say for other things that are published by the New York Times. And they particularly noted the changes in publishing during the 19th century, as well as literacy rates, especially in women, as being a major factor in the rise of the summer read. So many of the factors that contributed to the idea of summer reads were, and I'm going to summarize here, the ability of publishing to continue to sell books during the slow season, changes in technology for printing, reducing the price of books, and the idea that many people vacation at summer resorts contributed to what the New York Times calls a, quote, season of escape. So now that we've gone over the briefest history of summer reading, it is time to talk about the inevitable, the genre. Is there a genre? A truly definitive, if you are going to the beach, this is what you must bring. No, obviously not. But the New York Times points out that over time, the types of books readers reach for in the summer has changed. From books grappling with race to romance and thrillers, they have all held their place in one time or another in the last century as quintessential summer reads. In many of the articles I looked at, the very specific beach romance was mentioned, which is not only a romance book or a summer romance book, but one that takes place at the beach, i.e. beach read. There was an article published in the Michigan Daily by Kaya Ginsky, and she writes, quote, critics place beach romances in the escapist fiction genre, along with fantasy, mystery, and thriller. These books are not serious in the literary sense. These books always have a happy, albeit unrealistic, ending, and rarely address the thought-provoking cultural questions of literary fiction. And I thought it would be fun to poll my Instagram account and the podcast account, and I got some great answers for what people consider to be beach reads. So if you contributed to these answers, thank you so much. It was very fascinating. Many of the answers were, but the question that I posed was, what makes a beach read? And then I asked people to answer that question. And so many people were like, vibes. Just vibes.
Fair.
And for some people, they like specified that it was like the vibe that they got while reading the book, so like the feeling the book gives them, where for other people it's just like the vibe of the book, like, you know, the vibes are just right. So both of those. Many people answered romance, specifically contemporary romance that's not too serious. Thriller did make its appearance on some answers, and several pointed to a book that could be read in 1 to 2 sittings or was short and sweet. So whatever you take on your vacation this summer, I hope it's a book you enjoy, because there's nothing worse than bringing something that is unenjoyable and slow. And now you know that you're participating in a centuries-old pastime that has developed alongside society. I'm going to leave off with this quote from beachbound bookseller Janet Drum, who said, quote, the stereotypical beach reads are just the books that sell best in the summer. That's it.
Ooh, okay, what would you bring if you had to go to the beach right now? What would you bring?
I really want to reread the Brown sisters right now, so I think I'd bring
Yeah.
Danny. I think I'd bring Danny Brown to the beach with me.
Ooh, love.
Yeah.
If I had to do a beach read, I would probably bring, oh gosh. Honestly, probably like um I'm kind of in like a thriller mood for the beach, like something
Mm.
that I can read in one sitting. So I'm thinking like a Silent Patient-esque thing. Like
Mm.
not the Silent Patient, but something of that vibe.
Yeah.
Uh because yeah, I want a page turner, something I can't put down because I'm not swimming in the ocean, because if I touch seaweed, I will stop existing.
Fair. That's fair.
Also, we don't have beaches here, so
Yeah. We do have beaches where I live.
we got
But I
man-made lakes.
just
Do you want to go to man-made lake?
it's really hard to sit at the beach when you're so pale.
Oh, I get heat stroke. Like
It's
I'm
just like
I'm
everything is reflective. Even if you're under an umbrella, like you have to find the perfect amount of shade and then rotate with the sun. But then
yes.
the moment I spend more than 5 minutes outside, I just get overheated. So I spend the entire time I'm there trying to cool down. And the last
Yes.
time I went to the beach, I was with my friends and we ended up drinking the whole time. And I didn't realize how much I drank until I got home. And I was like, oh my God. I'm spinning from the heat. I'm spinning from the alcohol. Like, this was I never want to do that again. That was such a bad idea.
I've had one time that I went to a beach in Toronto and I got so sick from heat stroke. I told my friend, I was like, you need to go get me something from like the corner store. And I just was vomiting all night. Like it was so bad.
Mm,
The sun sucks, dude. Like my thing is like my ideal beach day, gone by 11 a.m. I am there for like 2 hours in the morning.
yeah.
Perfect.
So one of my friends her family used to rent a beach house every summer. And for a couple
Ooh.
summers when I was in high school and college, they invited me to come with them for a couple days.
Ooh. Very the summer I turned pretty.
Very the summer I turned pretty, but Jersey Shore edition. And
The best.
uh, and it was so nice to just like get to the beach in the morning before it got
Yeah.
really hot and then leave by like 11:30, 12 and
Ugh.
spend most of the afternoon inside the house or like at an ice cream parlor and
So
then
nice.
like go back around 4 or 5 o'clock after the main heat
Yeah.
had gone and kind of like stay through sunset. Like that's my ideal beach day, is to leave when
Yeah.
it's hottest.
Because then like that's also the time of day that you're falling asleep and then you're sleeping for an hour under the hot sun and then you're dead.
You're
You're
done.
dying.
You're
You're
done.
deceased.
Yeah.
You're done. What is the least likely book you're gonna bring for a beach read?
Least likely,
Yeah.
Priory of the Orange Tree.
Fair. I was gonna say any hardcover book. You could not catch me dead with a
Oh
hardcover
yeah.
book at the beach.
I
It's
do
paperback
tend.
or mass market paperback.
Yeah. So that's something I didn't really get to talk about, but the like inception of the mass market paperback was a huge factor for summer reads
Mm.
and beach reads, and somebody, I think it was in the New York Times article, they correlated mass market paperbacks to the like pre-Kindle because they were
Okay.
so cheap that you could walk into any store and just like decide to pick up a book off the shelf then and there,
Yeah.
which is very similar to how people view purchasing on Kindle.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I would honestly probably bring my like Kindle or e-reader to the beach before I bring a physical book.
Yeah.
Dang, interesting. Great job. Beach read.
Thanks. Beach
Beach read.
reads.
Wonderful.
I know.
Well, I
I thought
hope
it
you
was
are
just
all
going to be
smarter.
I thought it was going to be like a silly topic to do, and then it ended up being
No,
this like giant history lesson. Then I was like, this
it's
is
so
so
interesting.
fascinating. And there's like the New York Times article is really great. I
Yeah.
highly recommend reading it because there's a lot that I left out. Like there's this whole art like part of it that was about World War I and like so much.
Ooh. I love that like there's you can like follow the trends of what was happening in the world and how that affects beach read. Like how
Yeah.
cool is that? That is so cool. And I love that you pulled the Instagram people because I think yeah, like beach read, you can't just say beach read as like a term. Like you need to specify what your beach read is because it's
Yeah.
so broad.
Yeah.
So fun. Amazing. What you read and do? Or do you want me to go first?
I can go first. I feel like, oh my God, I read so much in June that I'm like, what do I talk about? Because I read a lot in June and then the show ended and I feel like I finished up a couple things I was reading and now I'm just like, I have so many books I want to read, but I don't want to read them.
Yep.
But my last 5-star read was Darkwater Daughter by H.M. Long.
Yes.
And
Yes. I
it
saw
comes
you
out
post about it.
it comes out in North America on July 18th. It's already out
Couple
in the
days.
UK. I don't know when this episode is coming out, but it will be out when this episode comes out. And if I get this episode out on the 19th, I'm doing a live with Hannah
Woo!
on TikTok on the 20th of July. So maybe my goal will be
Kinda
to get this
nice.
episode out on the 19th. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to her about this book.
That's so cool.
So this book follows a woman who can harness her singing to call or send away storms. And these people are highly coveted by the Navy and pirates because they can keep them on ships and protect them, and they're an asset out in war. And she happens to be the
Ooh.
daughter of this really prolific storm singer, who was known to like break fleets and had like helped with a peace that happened. And she is kind of the center of this story. And it's like one big game of cat and mouse. Like she is chasing somebody, other people are chasing her, but other people are chasing them. And it's all happening aboard the ocean. And everything is magical. Like you think you figured things out and then she whips things around and you're like, wait, what's happening? Like everything I thought was going to happen happened in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Like revelations. Hannah is very good at her pacing and her
Yeah.
revelations. Like she just knows how to pace a book. And I don't want to give too much away because I think it's a very like that's all you really need to know going into it. It's a very complex story. Like it's layered like an onion, and it's perfect. Like I literally left it and I was like, no notes, none. I couldn't have wanted anything more
Dude.
from it.
And like what a great summer read.
Well, it's actually
Is it not?
no, because it
Just
takes
kidding.
place on the winter sea, so everything is cold.
I was like, pirates, summer vibes. How
I know,
nice.
I know. I was like, it would be a great summer read if you want to be thinking about being absolutely frozen in a
Hey,
wasteland.
that's what I want. So it's a good Danielle summer.
Otherwise, I would say save it for like November, December. Then that would have been like my ideal time to read it. Because you know me, I love to theme my reads based on the time of year. But it was fabulous.
Ooh.
And then really quickly, I read The Deep by River Solomon, which is an any time of year read. That was also 5 stars. And it's about these mermaids, sea creatures, that are born from the unborn children of slaves that were ejected from slave ships. And this one character is the historian of all of these creatures, and they're kind of like, I can't do this anymore, this is too much knowledge, because basically what this society does is one person takes on all the memories of every person.
It's like The Giver.
I guess I'd never read or watched that.
It's like The Giver.
But then one day a year they all gather and the historian shares everything so that everybody can experience it, but then takes it back. And it's like, how is that helpful to a society when some of the memories are so painful? Like, is it easier for one person to carry that so that everybody can be blissful, or is that easier to carry as a society so that we can all help each other continue forward? And there's
So
it's very cool. It's multi-timeline, so you get to meet a bunch of different characters. And I think it came out a couple of years ago, and it's a really cool project because it's part of like a collective of storytelling. So it's based on a song which was based on something else, and they talk about that at the end of, I'm sure it's at the end of the book, but it was at the end of the audiobook.
That
And it
is
was
so cool.
really cool to kind of listen to how this kind of like fits in a zeitgeist, and thinking about the like political climate we're in right now, where critical race theory is being challenged, and like your book report,
everything,
like everything about education and knowledge is being challenged in this country. Like it just felt like a really poignant time to read it. And it was really fabulous, and it's like it's a novella. It's very short, so it's a quick.
What's it called again? Sorry.
The Deep.
The Deep. Okay, I'm adding it to my list. That sounds so. Was the audiobook good?
Yes, it was read by David Diggs, and it was fantastic. Fantastic.
I love David Diggs. Okay, I will get the audiobook. That sounds delightful. I mean, not delightful. It sounds very
but it was like, it was a very engaging and entertaining read.
I'll take it. It. And what an interesting concept. Wow.
Yeah.
Like that makes me be like, I need to read that book. That sounds so interesting.
Yeah.
Dang, dude. Dang.
I know.
Well, I, on the other hand, have just been reading romance books.
Well, I'm in the mood for a romance, so
I have went back and read all of the Devney Perry books in that series, like the Eden series, like Indigo Ridge. I had read the second book in the series, which is called I don't know. They're all these names that I don't.
I literally have one of those.
Oh no, Juniper Hill is the second book. So I'm gonna give a little like. So the first book is like One Night Stand turns into love. Okay. And the female main character is the new sheriff in town, which is kind of a slay. And basically the Edens are like this institutional family that basically run this town. And there's a whole bunch of them. Second book, Juniper Hill, is the single mom. She moves to Juniper Hill and helps at the hotel that the family runs as a maid. And she ends up renting the loft that one of the brothers lives in outside of the city. And he wakes up every night at like 2 a.m. to like rock the baby to sleep because the baby won't sleep. It's very sweet. Then Garnet Flats, which is a second chance romance. Female main character is a doctor, and the love interest is like an MMA fighter who's really famous. It's like, I was reading it and I was like, this is so strange. And then the one that I want to talk about more in depth is called Crimson River, which is the fifth book. It's the one that most recently came out. Okay. And there's still going to be another one because there's one more sibling, which is kind of a slay. And there's one other one I haven't read yet. It's like book 4 or something. Okay. Which is they get married in Vegas. And then they have to like figure out if they're going to stay together, which I was like, oh, this is such a slay. But Crimson River, I'm reading it from my Goodreads because I don't remember any of their names. So Lila is a twin. So her twin is the doctor. So she runs the coffee shop in town, and she never takes a day off. And then she decides to take a day off and go hiking, which is her favorite thing. So she goes hiking, and she stops by a man in the river who's cleaning blood off his hand after he's like killed a deer or something. And she startles him, and he comes over and he like chokes her out to the point that she passes out and is about to kill her and then runs off. And so she like has to like travel back to her car and drive back into the city. And she's like, y'all, what the heck is going on? There's this crazy man. And then this mysterious man shows up in town. His name is Lance. And we find out that he's a police officer from like a different jurisdiction who's kind of gone rogue to find this man who's been on the run. I think it's for like 5 years or something, after he's killed all his children and his wife, who happened to be, we find out, Lance's partner. This man used to be his partner at the district. So Lance is like on this hunt to try to find this man. and then he's slowly falling in love with Lila. And that is something that I appreciate about the Devney Perry books, because they give that like Mariana Zapata where it's like it's a little something more than just romance.
Mm.
Like honestly, I would say these books kind of err more on the side of like thriller than they do romance. I mean, they're incredibly explicit, so I don't want to downplay that. Like they are adult. But there's a good storytelling underneath all of the romance stuff happening.
Right.
So yeah, it's just the story of these people like falling in love, but knowing that there's like a deadline to their love, and like it was really good. Like I really enjoyed reading it, and it took me a couple days because it's long. All of her books are very long, so it was like the perfect thing that I needed, and that is a thing that I read. And then I'm also listening to the audiobook of Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which is a really cool book. She is an Indigenous author who's also an academic. She's a botanist, and she talks about her relationship as an Indigenous person to nature, and then as a botanist to nature, and how academia often bumps up against like Indigenous ways of knowing. She has a section that she talks about how she like shows up to her first day of school, and she's like, I'm so excited to learn all the animal, like all the plants names, and like Indigenous ways of knowing. Plants are like seen at on the same level as humans.
Right.
And so she's talking about that way, and the professor was just like so rude to her and was like, you should switch programs. But then she didn't, and she's like slaying and winning. Yeah, and there's like creation stories throughout, and like a lot of it's just a really cool book, and she does the audiobook, so it's been a delight.
Ooh.
Is that it?
Nice. Very exciting. Very exciting. I think that's it for the episode. Yay! Who knows when we'll be recording next, but hopefully soon. And
keep your eyes peeled.
Keep your eyes peeled on the Instagram, because that is where you'll get the latest updates. You can follow us on Instagram at Books on the Brain Pod, and you can go ahead and leave the little notebook and pencil emoji for us so that we know that you listened to this whole thing. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can leave the same comment. I know you guys have been commenting on our YouTube channel, and we do see them, but I don't think we always comment back because that's like a new platform for us.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out.
So we're not ignoring you. We just haven't figured out how to do our own admin across platforms. And it would be really great if you would rate, review, and subscribe. It would be like a little summer gift to us, because it lets us know what you think and what's going on. You can also follow us on our own platforms. I'm at Deirdre Rose Morgan on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'm at DJ Books on Instagram and on TikTok.
And thank you so much for listening. We will chat to you in the next one. Bye!
Yay! Bye!